The final thing we need to learn about before making our Notes app, and a very useful technique in general, is how to create an alert or a kind of pop-up window over the existing app screen. And that's fairly easy to do. So we're going to do it with a new project, which will be an alert demo. Usual options. And here we go. So I'm going to be working in mainActivity.java. And we'll create our alert in the onCreate method. So it's fairly straightforward to set up an alert. We use a new alert dialog builder. And I'll go for the Android version. The context is this, i.e. the main activity. And then we set all the options. So we might start by setting the icon. And we'll use android.resources.drawable. And then if we use IC, you can see there's a whole range of icons there, depending on what your alert is for. I'll go for the dialog alert. So this is just sort of telling them that there's something important to do. Then we'll set the title of the alert. So this is going to be one of those confirmation alerts that says, are you sure you want to do this? And then OK or cancel. So I'll set the title to, are you sure? And then we'll set the message. So this is a bit more information underneath the title. I'll set that to, do you definitely want to do this? And then we'll set the positive button to have a text of yes. And then we're going to set an on-click listener for this button, i.e. to do something when the button is pressed. This will be a new dialog interface, and you can see on-click listener is predicted for us there. So when the item is clicked, for now, we'll do a toast. Saying it's done. Of course, nothing is actually done, but that's where we would write our code to do whatever it is that the user has confirmed they want us to do. And then we'll set a negative button, which will just say no. And we're not going to do anything when the no button is pressed, so I'm not going to have an on-click listener for the negative button. And then show. Oh yeah, I do need to add in null, just to say I don't want anything to happen when the no button is pressed, other than the dialog to go away. All right, so let's give that a try and see what our alert looks like. And here we go. So there's our nice little pop-up menu. You can see everything else is now darker, and clicking elsewhere makes the alert go away. And then we'll just run that again to see what happens when I click the yes button. Obviously clicking no will just make the alert disappear. And here we go. So definitely want to do this. Yes. Then you can see the nice menu. It's done. Fantastic. So that's how we do alerts. I'm going to set you a quick challenge now to combine the menu adding skills, the alert dialog builder knowledge, and permanent storage. We're going to create a simple language preferences app, which looks like this. So when we first open the app, we see an alert dialog asking us what language we'd like. And then the purpose of the app is really just to save the user's language preference. So if we choose, for example, Spanish, then that is saved permanently, and you can see it's selected there. And we'll just prove to ourselves that that is indeed saved permanently by closing down the app and opening it up from the app drawer. There it is at the top. and you can see Spanish has been saved. So we've used the alert dialog and permanent storage, but we've also incorporated the menu. And now if we want to change our language, we just tap on a new language and that updates there. And once again, just to prove to ourselves, it is saving permanently. If we open up the app again, then it saves that user's preference. So it combines everything we've learned so far in this section. Time for you to build it. Pause the video and off you go. Best of luck. All right, I hope that went well. I'm going to start then by beginning a new project. I'll call it Language Preferences and all the usual settings. And layout wise, it's going to be very, very simple. The only item in the main screen of the app will be the text view saying what language we have selected. So first off, when the app is run for the first time, we want to show an alert to the user to pick a language. So let's add one of those in. We'll create a new alert dialog builder. Around the main activity. And we'll set the icon. So we'll use android.r.drawable.ic, and I'll go for speak now, just for a bit of variety, as we're talking about language. So we'll set the title to choose a language, and then we'll set the message to which language would you like. Now, I do realize it's not ideal to ask the user to choose a language in a particular language, so you might want to add, say, a Spanish translation here, but I'll leave it in English. Keep things simple. And then we'll set the positive button, which is just the right button, to English. And we'll have a new on-click listener. And we're going to want to set the language to English here. I think it would be useful to have a method to do that so that we're not duplicating code when we set it to either English or Spanish. So let's have a method called setLanguage, which will require a string called language. And for now here, we'll just set language to English. And then similarly, we'll set the negative button to Spanish with a new on-click listener, which will simply set the language to Spanish. And then we'll show our alert dialog. Okay, so what do we want to happen on the set language front? Well, two things really. We want to save the language permanently and then display that on the text view in the app. So first off, we'll use shared preferences. We're familiar with this now. So put in the package name and context dot mode private, and then shared preferences, edit, put string, language, and we want to set it to the language that has been set. There we go. So now we've saved that permanently. Next, we want to just customize our layout very slightly. I'll do that in the text view, again for a bit of variety. So we'll need to set an ID for our text view. I'll just call it text view. And initially, I'll have it be empty. And then over in main activity here, we'll create a text view called text view, which is going to be a text view, which we get from find view by ID, r.id.textView. And then we'll set our text view to have a value of language. Great. Now I'll just run that to save time later. But you may have noticed that one issue we're going to have is that we don't want this dialog to pop up if they've already set their language. So let's restore this from shared preferences and see if there's a value, and we'll only display the alert dialog if there isn't one. So I could create a whole new shared preferences, but that seems a little wasteful. So what I'll do is I'll create the variable outside the two methods, and then I'll set it up in onCreate. And then we'll only need to set it up the once. So then we'll create our string language. And this will be equal to shared preferences get string, and the string we want to get is language, and the value, if there isn't any value set, will just be an empty string. So then we'll test to see if language is an empty string, and if it is, we'll display the alert dialog. All right. So that should now behave as we want, except it won't display the menu part yet. But let's take a look. And here we go. So we have the alert. Excellent. English, and English is selected. Brilliant. Now, one thing I have noticed is if the language isn't empty, we should add the code to update the text view. So again, to avoid duplicating code, we'll define the text view up there. And then we'll set it up in the onCreate method, so it'll be accessible from anywhere. And then we'll just set the text of the text view to the language. So now if we run the app again, it should display the selected language when the app starts. And there we go. No alert dialog this time, just the user's preference. Super. So now the app is working as we want, except we want to have the option for the user to change the language later on via the menu. So let's add in our directory. There we go. And then create a new menu resource file. You can call it something else if you like, but I'll stick with main menu. And then we want to add an item with a title of English, whoops, ideally spelled right, and an ID of English, and then copy and paste that to give a Spanish option. Great. So now let's just add in our onCreate options menu code, which will require our menu inflator, which we'll call menu inflator, and we'll create it using get menu inflator, and then menu inflator inflate, and we want to get the menu using r.menu.main menu, and we want to associate that with this menu. There we go. And finally, on options item selected, we want to run that code but not return it. And then this time I'll use an if-else statement just for variety's sake, although you're very welcome to use a switch, it's probably a bit neater. So if item.getItemID is equal to r.id.english, then we want to set the language to English. And that was a capital E. And then else if item.getItemID is equal to r.id.spanish, we'll set the language to Spanish. And this time, again, for variety's sake, I'll return true. For this app, we're not testing what is returned, so it really doesn't matter. It's neater in many ways to just return true, but if you preferred, you could always do return true, and then return false if we get to the end of the method. All right, so let's take a look. We should now be able to update the preference with the menu, and that, of course, will be saved permanently. Here we go. So we've got our menu. Tap on it. We'll select Spanish. That's been updated. That looks good. So let's use a double click to shut it down. And this time, I'm going to run it from the Android app drawer. So we'll scroll down to find language preferences. There it is. And you can see the preference has been saved. Wonderful. So I hope you managed that. We've combined everything that we've learned in the last 3 videos there. And now we're going to build our first big app of this section, and that is our note-taking app.